Hi, welcome to A Course in Miracles workbook class, brought to you from the Little Garden in Sedona, Arizona, USA. Famous question.
So good morning, Jan. What are we doing today?
Today, in answer to your famous question, we're doing lesson 186 in the workbook of A Course in Miracles. It is the salvation of the world depends on me. And if you're using the Foundation for Inner Peace version, it's on page 351. We may refer to the book itself. We certainly will.
Yeah,
I don't know if we'll read from it, but we kind of like to just talk about how it's impacting us as a supplement to your doing your own reading and practice. I mean, for some people, beginners or whatever, this might be an introduction to the course, just like getting a little flavor of the course. But for those of you who are really doing it, don't count on this as a supplement, as a substitute for
yeah.
doing your real thing.
I mean, if the Holy Spirit and Jesus is saying that their teaching is planned obsolescence, so
Yeah,
we no longer need them,
right. Yeah,
that's what we're trying to work ourselves out of a job. Because you're right, all we can do is just demonstrate what we do
yeah,
and the effect on us, and then we
yeah,
can share that. But it's so important that everyone develop their own repertoire.
yeah,
Their,
and their own habits.
yeah,
We had a friend come over yesterday, and it was really, really sweet how, without any kind of prompting or anything else, she'd say, and she did 3 times, let's do a practice. And we'd sit and quietly meditate. At one point, she and Timothy both fell asleep. So it was a long practice for me, and I needed it. I needed it. Yesterday it was, I want the peace of God. And whenever I did that lesson, I could see the contrast between where I was in grabbing onto ego and I want the peace of God. Huge contrast. And if I just went along with my day, busy, busy, just doing whatever I'm doing, without that reference to the course, I wouldn't recognize just how powerful
yeah.
the lessons are.
Yeah, and what's interesting about that with this person that we've known for over 20 years, we used to live with her and all sorts of things. So when you're in a spiritual tradition,
Yeah,
whatever that tradition is, you have certain concepts,
yeah,
and everyone understands those concepts. So we can have a shorthand with her
yeah,
because we she knows us so well, we know her so well,
yeah,
and we both have a understanding we share in the course.
yeah.
So we have a little shorthand where we can quickly say, like she can say, let's do a practice,
And we totally get
and
what
we
she
know what
means.
she means by
Yeah,
that. So
yeah.
that's why these groups can function so importantly,
Hmm.
because it's one of the two biggest things about group dynamics is that when you join a group, you realize it's not just about you,
Yeah,
that others share the same concerns, same solutions,
yeah.
and that when you can't love yourself,
They love you.
you can let others love you,
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's big part of opening up to a thought system like the
yeah.
course.
So today, the idea is salvation of the world depends on me. Oh my gosh. That's what the ego says. Oh my gosh, like Atlas, the globe is on my shoulders. And that's ego. What it's saying is when we leave ego and move into our true self, we see the world is saved.
Yeah.
And when we see that everything is okay, everything's going to be okay, the Holy Spirit is in us, time is over. When we kind of intuit those kinds of things through the course's training, we realize I am the world. The true self of what I am is the self that I share with you and everyone else.
Right.
Uh, Yeah, it's a different, uh, two worlds, it's two different worlds. The ego's world, where I am beset, I am a victim, I am hurting, that's ego's world. If I'm in pain, it's because I'm listening to the ego. And Holy Spirit's world, which the real world, which is I only have a job to do here, and it's to constantly move out of the temptations of the ego. That's called forgiveness.
So if love is real, if it actually exists and it exists for me, then love has to meet me where I'm at.
Yeah.
So when the Course articulates these huge metaphysical ideas like there is no world, you're not a body, you're not an ego, you are as God created, we can understand those concepts.
Right.
But that is not enough.
No, right.
Love has to meet us where we're at. So in this lesson, he's talking about humility and arrogance. Now,
Yeah.
that's something we can recognize. And what the Course is doing is taking our upside down understanding of these and turning them around.
Yeah.
So in this lesson, in the Course, arrogance is saying that this little self has canceled love.
Yeah, right.
Now that's arrogant.
Yeah.
To think that this little self, but true humility is there's this great power that works through us.
Yeah.
So when we give our ideas to the Holy Spirit, when we give our concepts, then he takes those concepts and he gives them back to us as miracles.
Right.
All things are echoes of the voice for God.
Right.
So we have to have something we can recognize here.
Right.
And we can recognize our emotions, for instance.
That's my way in.
Yeah.
That's how I recognize when I'm listening to ego.
Right.
It's not coming from my head. It's coming from my emotions and my bodily sensations. If I'm in pain, I'm listening to the ego. Period.
Right. So when we recognize what our real decisions are, it's between, is it fear or is it love? Is it innocence or it's guilt? Am I forgetting and remembering? When we see that what seems like opposites here are not really opposites, then we can be transformed and redeemed because we have a new understanding. Oh, humility is, there's a great power that works for me.
Yeah.
Arrogance is saying, I'm this little person.
Exactly.
I mean, that's so key. And then moment to moment, we have to give that to the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, seriously, moment to moment.
Right.
And the Course tells us, and I'm just reminding myself because of the pain I've caused myself with ego thinking, the Course is telling us that humility means grandeur and arrogance means pain. Duh. This is not the way the world thinks. That's why we have to keep on doing these lessons, every day. And we're still in the instructions of every hour. Remember this.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I taught this class earlier was, I forgot what I was going to say.
Okay, so then let's look at the idea of acceptance. So humility and arrogance are paired, I counted 6 times in this lesson.
That's a good insight.
Yeah. Sometimes you learn by doing a little analysis. You don't have to go into it too deeply, but sometimes I kept saying, I'm seeing these things paired. How many times am I seeing the word arrogance? And I just started counting them. That indicates that this is a seriously important idea.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and it's saying acceptance of the plan that we did not make is the way out.
Yeah.
And the plan we didn't make is forgiveness.
So here's one example of love meeting us right where we're at.
Yeah.
So the ego question always is, will I be enough? Will I have the resources? Will I be able to meet the situation? How am I going to deal with that? Will I be enough?
Or was I enough? Did I do it well?
Right. So all that pattern of thinking, which seems to be giving us real understanding, the Holy Spirit is saying, give that to me. So when I feel like I'm little and I don't have enough, which is what the ego is saying all the time, the Holy Spirit takes this concept of I'm not enough and says, that's the only thing you need to come to love,
Right.
is to recognize that as you see yourself, you're limited. So the total despair that the ego has all the time of I'm not enough, the Holy Spirit can use that
Right.
to show us our true power, because we can't hear love's voice if we're listening to fear.
Right.
We just can't.
Right.
That's why we have to deny the one and affirm the other.
I know, no matter how real it looks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But-
And because it appears real to us when we are in pain, we just have to say, I have a little willingness to experience the peace of God, or I have a little willingness to accept God's plan for salvation. It's not complete, obviously, because I'm in pain, but I'm turning toward the Holy Spirit and asking for help, and help is always given when we do that.
Yeah. And that's where the trust comes in.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the first attribute of teachers of God is trust.
Right.
Everything comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
There's another theme in this lesson, and that is the ego gives us a lot of goals,
yeah.
and we couldn't possibly achieve them all. And it's like as soon as one is achieved, if it is, then it throws up another one. You got to do this. You got to be that. You got to present this way. You got to show up in a certain way. Your activities, your thinking is wrong. Now you got to do something different. You are not such a great person after all, but you will be if you follow me, Mr. Ego or Ms. Ego, whatever it is. Conflicting goals. And here it says one goal.
Yeah. You know,
one goal is salvation and accepting the plan that God gave to us.
Yeah.
Holy Spirit. I'm sorry.
No. I like what you're saying about finding the arrogance and how many times it's used, right? But one of the lessons that shows that we're goal orientated and that our goals are in conflict is in the first 50, I don't know what my own interests are. I don't know what the purpose of everything is. So when you do the lesson of I don't know what my own interests are, it says, take a look at your goals that you have in any given situation and realize you're putting up goals that could never be accomplished in that situation. So the first one that ever came to me when I did that lesson was, I raised my son to think for himself, and I want him to think just like I do. Now, those two things are in conflict, and they both can't be necessarily accomplished.
Right.
So we have to look at this goal. You're really good at that goal. I mean, I think you taught goal-directed.
Yeah, I taught. I did. I taught that to business people. Yeah. Goal setting. Yeah. Now the goal is to recognize that the salvation of the world depends on my forgiveness. The salvation of the world depends on my letting go. Because when I let go of that world, I am in Holy Spirit's world. And Holy Spirit's world doesn't have all the thorns and nails of the ego's world. Right. It just doesn't have them.
That's right.
So the world that I'm saving is the world that is projected from my mind. This is the world we're here to save. The world that we made, the world that appears to be in such distress and pain. It's not the real world that God created. The real world is seen through forgiveness. And when we see it, the Holy Spirit takes that enlightenment and shines it back onto the world that still needs help.
You know, it might be worthy to take a look at paragraph 6, where it talks about the arrogance.
Let's talk about it.
So what this paragraph is saying, and it's so important, that this realization that we go, okay, I get the course, that's great. Now, I can act on love and innocence instead of these other things, right? What it's saying is that when you start to listen to the voice of love, things sometimes seem to get worse.
Oh yeah. What does it say? The ego, it kind of, it sits back as long as you're more or less listening to it. And
Suspicious of you.
yeah, but it's not really hurting you. It's kind of letting you coast until you make a decision for God, until you make a decision to really be as God created you, to live from spirit and to go for your true joy. Then the ego gets vicious.
Right. So the thing I want to point out in this paragraph is this idea of strength, wisdom, and holiness.
Yeah.
This is what he's saying is your real nature. You have strength, wisdom, and holiness. And it's important to see in this paragraph that when we start acting on that, that's when the ego begins to ramp up. So we have to understand that when we start practicing love, and the thing that wants to run away from love is not us. It's
and not our true self. Yeah.
And not our true self. It's this concept of an ego body that goes, oh my God, you mean I can't blame the world for me?
Yeah.
I can't blame something else than my thoughts.
Right.
I mean, from the idea that you're responsible for your thoughts is not just an idea in the Course, it's the beginning of wisdom in anything.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for my thoughts.
Right.
My thoughts produce my experience.
Yeah.
But then we have to meet that challenge and then say, well, it's not because what they did, it's my thoughts.
Exactly.
That becomes a real challenge at that point.
It's like, fishing is like we project out, we think we've caught a fish, and we have to reel it back in. But in this case, it's an idea. Reel it back in, bring it back. It's not out there. It's not what my brother did. It's what I am doing to myself. Yeah. And something that some strength, wisdom, and holiness that was shown to me this morning is that when I'm upset, and I'm sure this is true of all of you, when I'm upset, there's a body sensation. Okay, whatever it is, anger is different from fear in terms of the body sensation, but it's there. And paying attention to it is important because that shows you that your thinking is wrong. What was shown to me this morning is how the temptation of ego is to say, because I have this body sensation, I have to follow it to see what the problem is out there. Right? I have this body sensation. It feels like fear. What's making me fearful? What is it out there that's making me fearful? Looking for it out there. Ego will do that. It's like, I don't feel good. Something's wrong. What's wrong? Who's wrong? Right? Whereas, if I could say, my body just doesn't feel good. I was so in the grips of ego yesterday. I had pain all over my body. Seriously, my back, my jaw, my throat, and all the visceral stuff. If I were to say with ego, whoa, something's wrong. Who's wrong? What's wrong? How can I fix that? By getting it fixed out there, I'm not doing my forgiveness work. If I'm saying, wow, I'm in pain, I'm doing this to myself with an unforgiving thought. How can I change that? I'm really stuck in this. I'm really like it's a cycle. Thought, body, thought, body, thought, body, and projection. All of that, my whole world is made up from ego. If I can say, I don't like this. I want the peace of God. Or that's what it was yesterday. So today it's salvation of the world depends on me. Help. I need help. That's the big prayer. It's the little willingness to turn toward Holy Spirit and ask for help when we're upset that brings the relief. And Holy Spirit is never going to say it's definitely her fault. It is definitely his fault. It's definitely the imagination you have about how the world is burning up and flooding and falling down and all of that. Not that. It's your desire. Holy Spirit is saying it's your desire to stay in separation, to stay here for a little longer, to just keep the keep the pot stirring, as you say.
What's the story? The mother of the universe stealing the pot. What's funny is the Course always uses a very subtle humor. And it says in the end, we're going to leave laughing,
Yeah.
right? So we have to see the power of our decisions. We have
Yeah.
to see how powerful they are and
Yeah.
recognize I'm deciding between innocence or guilt or
Right.
fear or love. But in that lesson, this is the joke he's telling us. In that lesson,
Big joke.
my grievances,
Hide the light of the world.
well, there's something about my grievances deny my true function.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the question is, do I come from grievances or do I come from miracles?
Right.
And if I'm coming from grievances, grieve means loss.
Right.
I'm grieving a loss of something. Well, when you're coming from that, what the Course is saying, the role you've assigned to your mind when you're coming from loss is what can change other than my mind.
Right.
So
right.
I'm okay.
Right. That is a big joke. Yeah.
That's the fundamental problem. I'm trying to figure out what can change other than my thinking.
Yeah.
And as long as we're doing the Course, that's going to be our decision. We have to keep coming back to that.
Right.
Because we're learning the power of our thoughts.
And he's saying in this lesson today that when we accept God's plan for salvation, when we accept that our job is letting go, it's another word for forgiveness. I like that one. I really like that one. When we accept that, what we're doing is uncovering our true self.
Yeah.
We're remembering that we're not small, that we are magnificent. And I'm thinking about those two sections in the Course. They're not close together, but one of them is littleness versus magnitude, and the other one is grandeur versus grandiosity. And they're both telling the same story. It's like you are not a little tiny dot upon the earth, or considering the galaxies, you're not the tiniest of tiny, tiny little nothing. That's not who you are. And you're not living within a body. You are the spirit that permeates the universe.
Right. So there's all those sentences in the Course that describes mental content. It's showing us this is what's going on in your mind. This is what goes on when you're thinking with the Holy Spirit. It describes the content of both those situations.
Mm-hmm.
But what it also is saying is that there's these attitudes that you can develop in these situations where you feel when you feel inadequate, rather than that being a problem for you, that can be your solution.
It certainly is an impetus to get moving.
It's the one thing we need to do. See, this is where the confusion in the mind is, because it's not just affirmation of the truth.
Yeah.
It's not just a description of that or a description of its denial. It has to give you something to do,
right,
to realize the truth of it.
Right.
So when you read through these sentences, right, you can see, he's describing the content of my ego thought system. He's describing the content of the Holy Spirit's thought system, but it's not enough. He has to give us something to do.
Right.
And what's the one thing he's going to give us to do?
Forgive.
Simple.
Yeah.
Do I judge or forgive?
Yeah. And I like that image of the altar, putting it on the altar. We have a friend who uses that image a lot, and it's in the Course, it's in the text, and I don't think it's there that much, but it's really helpful. It's like whatever is distressing you, whatever seems not right, whatever seems to be the problem, imagine it's a thing and put it on the altar and let go of it. Give it to Holy Spirit. Let go. That's forgiveness. And trust that Holy Spirit and love, you and Holy Spirit are one and the same. You're joined. That's the truth. The problem is not the truth. Give it to him and ask for a miracle. And the miracle always starts with the mind. That's the big miracle, the shift in perception from ego thinking to Holy Spirit's thinking. And then it may show up in form. The form will follow in some way that will bless you.
You know, and you got to cash the check that that the course is claiming that this is always practical.
Got to take it to the bank, huh?
But you got to see that it's practical, that it applies to every moment. So let me give you an example of that. We've had roommates in the past, and in the past, we had a roommate
Always, yeah.
who we gave the responsibility of paying the electric bill. Well, she's a little child who tends to act out her stuff, and then will you still love me if I act it out? So she didn't pay the electric bill for 3 months, and they turned off the electricity, right? So now, after that point, we're considering, who should we have as a roommate? And this person comes up, and the question to ask practically in that situation is, am I avoiding my lessons of forgiveness
Yeah.
by denying this
Exactly.
person?
Exactly.
Am I denying my lessons of forgiveness with, or is the Holy Spirit saying to me, no, don't have that situation because
Yeah.
that is not optimal for
Right.
you learning forgiveness?
In other words, we don't know.
We don't know, but
That's
there's
the thing.
practical answers.
There are, but we're not getting them from here.
Right.
We're not getting them from making a list on the past of what it all was and projecting that into the future.
Right.
Yeah. Now this isn't really a situation for us, but it sure could be because we
was for
have,
me in the past.
we move, we have different roommates, and coming up, we're just having retreatants, and we totally love it. So 3 of the people on this call are scheduled to come and stay a month with us soon.
And we're not worried that you're not going to pay the electric
We're paying
bill.
the bills here. Yeah.
But I mean, I just want to get the practical thing in that, because if it's just staying on this metaphysical level, that's good. They give you comfort, but you need something here
Right.
that is relevant
Mm-hmm.
to what you're doing with your life.
Right.
It has to come and meet you.
Yes.
To be love, it has to meet you just where you're at.
Yeah. So it says at the beginning of paragraph 12, do as God's voice directs. And if it asks a thing of you which seems impossible, remember who it is that asks and who would make denial. It's like it's telling us there is going to be some guidance for you, but do your forgiveness work as the foundation. You cannot get guidance while you're holding on to your grievances.
I'm glad you mentioned that paragraph, because it's bringing these 2 things that seem like opposite, affirmation and denial. So it says, do as God's voice direct. And then it says in sentence 5, let not the ego's voice direct you.
Yeah.
You need both. Deny one, affirm the other.
Oh yeah, good. Yeah.
Both of those
Right.
things have to be there.
Right.
Because if you're listening to fear, you can't hear the voice of love.
Right.
I mean, fear can help you focus. Well, there's a problem here.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But
Yeah.
you can't listen to love's voice if you're listening to fear.
Yeah. In other words, carrying the grievance is going to prevent you from experiencing your oneness with spirit.